I've endeavoured to impart to you that awareness is all there is. Awareness is. Every word I speak always has multi-dimensional levels to it. I open my mouth, or I think one single thought, or even if I feel deeply, every level of awareness opens in my consciousness. Because the truth is, each and every one of us is pure awareness, or at least our ground of awareness is pure. And our ground of awareness is actually absolute awareness. If I keep moving on, then maybe you'll get the idea. So it's clear that there is an I that is aware. It's clear that there is an I that is aware. And if you look, it's also clear that awareness knows an I. That's much the same as, although a little different, but for the purpose of what I'm endeavouring to get across, as saying awareness knows. This life, this one, is equivalent to the Big Bang. The one that you have right now is equivalent to the Big Bang. You are that becoming now. You move from the deep and you have immediate awareness, perception, knowing, having life as this form of Big Bang. That's what you are. You are now. You've never been any other than now. You actually exist on every level of existence and on deeper levels of being. You already have your being on multi-dimensional levels. This is not New Age speak, this is the truth. The moment you came from nothing and moved what you are as light and energy into form, you already moved as a being with multi-dimensional levels and moved as that being having multi-dimensional forms, most subtle forms to this form here, which is probably the most grossest form. Maybe there's more gross forms. I'm not quite sure about that one, but could be. So you already are on finer levels of your own beingness. That is all your potential without beginning and end. I could say that is just to kind of have a little more guidance. That's Alpha and Omega. That is that. Which really means no beginning and no end. It's all potential. It's potential that you can't even dream of. It's so vast. And it's already what you are. Now I'm going to endeavour to explain something. Awareness, though, has no subject-object relationship. No subject-object relationship until awareness knows. Then, dependent on what level awareness is knowing, that level becomes one of its streams of activity, one of its streams of intelligence, of embodiment. So when awareness is knowing form as a self, it tends to relate as awareness knowing form, and immediately it forms an immediate relationship in self. It becomes focused on this particular I. Then as awareness, you build this self-identity. We've looked at all this. It helps awareness become individualized as a mirror of its oneness. It helps it become right here and right now, all that it can be in a form. So the moment awareness identifies in self, then it identifies often with that form. And then we call that form, it's a form of me. We all know this one, this is basic. Now, when awareness, though, begins to be called beyond the self-constructs, the levels it touches on are the levels of awareness knowing. And in that moment, awareness knowing enters that level of its real self. Awareness knowing enters that level of real self, but there is not a subject-object relationship there. It's a pure knowing as awareness. It's so pure. That's why awareness that's used to identification with forms in self is pretty amazing for that awareness to awaken to another level that it actually already has, but hasn't awakened on that level of knowing as yet. So then when that awareness awakens on a finer level beyond itself, it awakens on a level where it knows that level is also it. It's a level of awareness much, much, much finer than the level of awareness identified as a self. During such a life as this, it's possible for who you are to constantly be awareness awakening into greater depths of knowing itself on finer levels of being, all the way to the real you. What we tend to do, awareness tends to do as a someone, is identify with that level, and in that moment of openness, it's pure. And it creates a light that is supremely intelligent. And suddenly you're finding a way of being on a level you never even knew possible. And all your burdens of self are transcended in that moment. And you're knowing freedom, clarity. You're basically knowing more than the limitation you placed on awareness having a self. Awareness can move to any higher, deeper level of calling, deeper in the body and higher in the consciousness. And it can awaken to multi-dimensional levels of what it already is. It's pretty fantastic, really. But its tendency is to relate it to a self-person, instead of just let it stay wide open in what it is. So, who you are is a big bang. And you have, or you will have, the growing capacity to open on deeper levels of who you are. And they'll be altogether different than the level of self that you've constantly associated you with, which is where the work happens. It's where the self is made more pliable and more opened. By awareness landing on finer levels of being, it disturbs the hell out of yourself. And suddenly you're in a moving dilemma of undoing your awareness, undoing the levels that you've been associating with. And if you're real about this, you start to move in a way of true, real learning, in brightness. You start to clearly begin to see you're not a body-mind identity. And your destiny is already written. And it's that you discover you're the meaning of whatever you move into. So if you move into a new form, you move into a self, you're the meaning, the light of meaning. You're that feels that level up with what you are. That is not an identity of separate sense self. You're not really associated with the subject and object. That's just your growing ability to know that what you give your energy to, you will be subject to. What you give your energy to, you will be subject to. So if you give your energy to an identity, you'll be subject to that identity, which means, where I come from, it means transcend the subject and object by entering it purely, as pure you, real you. So when you enter into a relationship, for instance, a human relationship, you enter into it purely, really, and you go all the way in as awareness, knowing. You don't have to be anchored in anything. Awareness and knowing are already fully anchored. You don't need to be anchored in something. You recognize this is really what is. So then the subject, object, the things of this life and the knower of those things change and transform. The knower becomes more knowingly knowledgeable in the way of knowing what a thing is. And it discovers it created that thing. It created for integration. To enter the things of life that have risen out of it, entering more consciousness, when awareness, knowing, having a self, having a body, when awareness enters more knowing, there will be more forms of that knowing. So then, instead of looking at things as a particular subject called a me, with a particular subject called a form of a problem, a form of pain, a form of this or a form of that, you begin to be bright for awareness. You begin to really know and be, and forms just display how you put them together. Somehow that gives you entrance into finer, no-place places of your being. That's where your potential is. Your potential is to unite as awareness back into your being, the one that you created so you could know yourself. And so vast is the potential there, you'll know no end, no beginning and no end in it. And if you look now, really look now, you know no beginning here, and really you know no end, because that's of who you are. You don't have beginnings and ends. if you really look as awareness. You have forms of your bright intelligence of being, knowing those forms are then, as it were, served, and they naturally pass away because they've been integrated into your awareness. So suddenly awareness knows itself on a finer level that form came out of. It really begins to understand the nature of what it is and the nature of human life. And it begins to grow, this knowing and this understanding. So you already do exist, and you already are on every level possible. But when you confine you, who you are as awareness, knowing, to history and body-mind, you're in a limited expansion of experience. It just becomes personalized experience. It just passes away like a dream. But when you're really into your own destiny and moving in it as the meaning behind all things and no things, then you find you are evolving. Your capacity as awareness to truly be fundamentally aware of who you are with no beginning and end, and to truly know the state of what is wherever you are. You begin to be able to move increasingly deeper, and it begins to naturally have form whilst you have a body. In that, just like as awareness, you're attracted to knowing. In this retreat, more and more, if you look, as you're really settled here and stopped struggling with the self that you are actually developing and evolving, and when you cease struggling, you became more of what you are, awareness. And awareness always heads towards what it knows as being truth. And suddenly you rested deeper and deeper, and you are able in real ways to move as awareness in being. And things unfolded, and you just began to see it all. And so deeper. You began to move in truer discernment. You are no longer mixed up in the body-mind identity. That's saying awareness let go of subject-object. It knew there wasn't one. It's beginning, there is no subject-object. There is only awareness. Or one could say oneness. And you were knowing I am that one, no matter where you looked. This I that you call yourself. And as you began to rest deeper into that and really relax into this, you began to really know yourself as the constructs that you once put together to have life. You began to know that you are life and have no need to put things together. And what you were holding onto, you began to realize you don't need to actually hold on to anything. As you gravitate towards real knowing at the heart, then fulfillment is a natural flow and course of having life. You begin to really move in this life and give up worrying and give up this idea that everything's a problem, and give up the fight and give up the struggle. You begin to really be in this life as a profounder intelligence. And that's when you begin to awaken on finer levels of being that you didn't even think were possible. But then you're the one, as awareness knowing, marries that into this form. That's where you have to leave the world alone. Yourself in the world cannot give you the information. How you integrate what you are as knowing, as greater reality, having your immediate and direct form of life. The world isn't interested and doesn't know the how of this. And until you, as awareness, respond to your knowing and cease responding as a self, then yourself won't respond to what you are. The moment you start to respond to knowing in your heart, yourself starts to respond to you as the only real power in the universe. And there is rapid self-transformation. But on one place, you have no need of this to even take place. That's why it does so rapidly. Because it is natural for you as awareness knowing to ongoingly evolve the universe and consciousness itself. Relating to the human form that you've entered into, then you're bringing your universal intelligence into your human form. Now if we have a look at what we just looked at over these 15 days and this morning, begin to see this. This will really help you. You don't actually need help. You just need, come this way, look this way. There's not one single moment of the day where you're not entering something. You just have this fixed idea that there are things here. There are no things here. All are entrance point to more God, more good, more love, and more divinity. There are no things in this sense-perceived world. It is all God. It is all doors to finer places of pure being. So then when you look at and you head towards the people that you meet everyday life, your tendency is identification as a person that does and looks and sounds a certain way. And they do certain things. But really, everyone you meet is a new entrance point into a profounder place of being, knowing, and activating that knowing. It's how you grow. Begin to see everything as an entrance to that is indescribably, until you're in it and then therefore can speak of it, always more than yourself. Real enjoyment happens when, having human form on this level as awareness, you are constantly an entrance into more of what you truly are, into the deep. Your real human enjoyment is when you enter into the more and you relate that to human life. This is your real humanity, and it evolves humanity. So everything, there's not a single thing that's not an entrance point into divinity, and always more, 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 more. Abundance. Real, profound abundance, yet to live through your veins as awareness knowing, having form. So See everything as entrance into more. That will have you being true. That will have you loving truth. And what spills out of the meeting place of awareness, knowing, being true. Everything then begins to be an entrance. Then you know what you're moving into. Not as a self, but as pure awareness, knowing. But that, I'm endeavouring to get across, makes you truly a real human being. So everything is an entrance point. There's not one single thing that's not an entrance point into greater consciousness, vaster awareness, and the possibility of you so knowing you on that level that you've never entered before. You are no longer a limited human. You are unlimited, vast potential, having human form. Knock, and the door shall open. Enter, and all will be given. This is the truth. The doors are everywhere. The more is everywhere. Step into it and really know what you're stepping into. Don't listen to any knowledge from yourself. Into yourself becomes more and more of immediate belonging to you as awareness. The more you're true, responding to your heart in yourself begins to know who you are and becomes equally responsive to your way of being. Yourself always will fight and struggle while you're not being you, but being something that you're not. An idea, a concept, a want, a need. Your being has no want, no need, and has no concepts. It's pure. So everything is an entrance. Let that really land in your awareness, in your heart. Then it'll have your form and yourself. And very, very rapidly, you'll be a total movement of love, depth, peace, harmony, and real well-being. You'll be a living being of awareness. For you, there will be no death, because you're already entering into death by having everything seen as an entrance into more. So you've already crossed over this minuscule death of the dropping away of the body, because you're moving in what is more than the body and more than the self. Therefore you have already died, and you are alive and real in another place, and yet you're here having this form. Everything is an entrance point of your more, your evolution, your possibility. It's your destiny, you see, for you to cleanly and clearly know how you create the universe and expand it, and that you are that which is even beyond this. In very real ways, you'll find that you're so much more open to life as it is. You won't play the game of trying to control life so that you get what you want as a self. You'll see that you are the life, and you are you, and you are divine in it. And there is really only oneness here. But until you recognize that, it doesn't move. The oneness doesn't move until you're being one, and then it moves. So in real ways, you'll see very much the falling away of what used to cause you difficulty and problems, just because you're moving into your being as awareness, knowing. Then you'll be the knowing and not a self that has the self transforming. You actually land in more abundance as a being. Less and less difficulty, less and less fight. Everything becomes, as it were, an easy openness of your own being. And you begin to have the kind of intelligence and ability to bring about solutions to this human life, because you're transcending it and including it. You're going to be walking out of this retreat very shortly. You're in a living, realized field right now. The form is actually a living, realized field. Use that practice of the form just for yourself, and it'll just all turn around, and it won't be able to give you a clear reflection of who you are, but it will give you a clear reflection of what you're doing and where you're coming from. So as you walk out into the world, be in the same place of discovery and beingness and openness that you are being drawn to in the retreat. And to see really that this is all there is in the real life. In the real life, all the struggles mentally and emotionally and on many other levels experience are just living. It's not the real life, it's the false perceptions that arise out of belonging to self rather than being you. They all begin to naturally fall away as you're simply honest and true to what you're knowing. Gravitate as awareness to more knowing at the heart. You'll begin to be stabilized in what knowing is and how it forms this reality. And always it forms it from greater reality. Greater reality behind the sense machine is what is being poured into here. Greater reality, the levels up from your current association with this life, relationship with your life. Greater reality is what's naturally being poured in. It's not of this time and space, and has nothing to do with this world as it is. And so it would just drop in more and more purely, and it's not here, not coming in to fit in. It comes in to be exactly what it is, regardless of how things have been on this planet. It's how the true universe moves. Always, the true universe always flows into what is more than what it has been. This is why there's moments when your life, you have no recognition whatsoever of the life that you used to live. Because you took the big shift by being big and real enough to respond to the knowing in the heart, rather than the forms of yourself and all that information. As I've already explained, that turns around as you respond to awareness knowing. It also turns around because then yourself responds to you as awareness knowing. And that's real human transformation.